Hey everybody, Gary with Basecamp Trading. Let's take a look at gold again today. This is our 240-minute chart in gold, and you can see this is basically in an uptrend going into today. In fact, we'd even triggered a bull flag in the overnight. Now, we ended up leaving a topping tail after non-farm payroll. This bar was our non-farm payroll bar this morning. And you can see that the initial reaction, we pushed up, and then we ended up leaving a topping tail and pushed quite a bit lower, actually making this a failed bear flag. Now the body actually ended up being buying this. There's a lot of whippy action going on in here. It went down and then back up, and the body was actually buying, but we left that topping tail, triggered in a failed bear flag. And then the next bar was a really bearish bar, just opened at the top and then just started heading lower. And you can see got all the way down to here. Didn't actually hit significantly undervalued, came real close, didn't exactly hit it, but then left this bottoming tail after the big push down. Took a while for the market to kind of digest the news and decide exactly what it wanted to do with it. But then here's our 30-minute chart. And right in here was all that craziness from non-farm payroll. You can see just big whips back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And lots of price movement, in here, but it's almost impossible to trade this. I mean, you're just Vegas trading, rolling the dice, hoping that you're guessing right on your entries because while you're getting a lot of movement in the bar, I mean, the high of that bar was 51.80, 1851.80 all the way down to 1836.90. So, I mean, that's what, $1,500 worth of movement in that bar. So I mean, lots and lots of movement inside that bar, but it was all up and down really fast. 50, 80, sometimes even 100 ticks I think on one move, but it was all real quick, just back and forth, back and forth. So if you guess right, good. If you guess wrong, you get smoked, and that's all it is, guessing, because it was making these big giant swings, 30, 40 ticks at a time, in both directions really quickly. And it took a while for the market to settle down, figure out what it wanted to do. You can see big push up and then left topping tail, big push down, left bottoming tail. Then this bar made a push down, then a push up, left topping tail again, and then this bar pushed up, left a topping tail, and then the market kind of started to settle down. We're actually able to start trading right in here. And again, 3 bars in a row, leaving these big topping tails, definitely showing a reluctance for gold to go any higher, and was actually starting to look a little bearish. These topping tails are really bearish, and ultimately, the EMAs all kind of closed in on each other, and then this bar right here was a really bearish bar. Opened at the top, broke through resistance, and actually closed down here at the bottom. So this was a really bearish trigger bar. Now, it did stop at one point right there at the 50 EMA. We know that this 50 EMA is always, well, I shouldn't say always, but very often a sticking point. You can see how many times, price just comes into this zone and reacts to it. I mean, even these bars, as crazy as the market was moving, we're still moving above and below the 50 EMA. So this did stop here, but then continued on down, actually closed below it. And then we set up this doji, we pushed down and then came back up, and then the market just kind of moseyed its way back up throughout the rest of the day. You can see it's just a real muted move back in the other direction. But we did get some good opportunities right here in this really strong bearish setup. And here's how we were trading those. We were trading that off of the 2-minute chart. And this was the beginning of the non-farm payroll craziness, and all of this was during that too. I mean, this was from 7:30 to where we finally took a trade at just a little before 9 o'clock. So, again, lots of craziness going on here, and you can see. I mean, just look at the size of these whips, back and forth, up and down, tails everywhere. I mean, this is just really hard to trade. It's just a mess, really. But then we did get some trend lines put in. We had significant bottom here and a significant bottom there. So once we made this bottom right here, we're actually able to draw our first trend line in. We put that in right there. Now, at that time, none of this was here, but that was our trend line. And then we got a more aggressive trend line. We had this bottom here and this bottom here. So we were actually able to put in a more aggressive trend line right here, because what it looked like we were about to do is trigger a trend reversal breakout. We definitely had one set up at this point, because we came down, put in this pivot, and then we came up here. And while we were up here making this lower high right here, that's when we put our trend line in. So it's aggressive. This was an aggressive move, no doubt about it. But we kept leaving all these topping tails on the higher time frame charts, topping tails on this chart, and we were about to trigger the trend reversal breakout because we had a pivot here. Wasn't a lower pivot. Your previous pivot low was back here, but it was a pivot, and then this was a lower pivot high. Here's your previous pivot high. So we definitely set up the trend reversal breakout right here. We had our trend line in place. And again, this was an aggressive entry. You know, the more conservative would have been to wait for the break, but that break was going to happen kind of right there at a potential support area. So we wanted to take advantage of what was happening right here, because we were really bearish on that 30-minute chart at this time, triggering yet another long topping tail. And momentum was confirming our price action. We'd had a lower high in price and was being confirmed by a lower high in momentum. And you can see that the fast line was crossing to the downside under the slow line, turning our histograms red as we were triggering our trend line break. And as we were triggering our trend line break, that was the same place that we were triggering that first reversal doji on the 30-minute chart. So our entry, we triggered in about 1840. It was, the fill was actually 1847.90 is what the fill was. But you were looking to enter somewhere under 1848.10. And again, the fill was at 1847.90. And then on these 2-minute charts, we just start following our each 2-minute bar. We put our stop 2 or 3 ticks above each bar as we work our way down. So our entry was off of this bar, so our stop's up here. And then we're just 2 or 3 ticks above each bar, and we just kept working our way lower. We triggered the trend reversal breakout. Our 5 and 18 crossed to the downside. Price moved below the cloud. We actually broke, see how we came, tested this trend line, bounced, and then broke under the trend line, came back and actually retested it. Had a reversal doji right here, came back, retested it, and then set up the bear flag right there. And this was a good place for us to go ahead and add to our position, because at this point we still weren't stopped out on our initial entry, because again, we're trailing 2 to 3 ticks above each bar. 1843.40 was the high of that bar, 1843.50 the high of that one. So we didn't get stopped out. It was close, but it didn't take us out, and we just kept on working our way lower. We triggered in the bear flag. Our stop now stays above our setup bar, and as long as we don't go into the no-go zone, we're still in the trade. And then we just continued to work our way lower all the way down here. We finally got stopped out down here. So it was a nice push to the downside in gold.